We're gathered this afternoon to mourn the passing and celebrate the life of Joan Newman. Shaviti Adonai, I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore is my heart at peace and my soul calm. My being is secure. For you do not abandon us in death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show us the path of life. Your presence brings fullness. Endurance is your gift. When Lori first told me that Nancy's latest grandchild, Nancy and Jonathan's latest grandchild, was born 3 hours before Joan passed, I was reminded of a poem by Mary Oliver, The Sun. Have you ever seen anything in your life more wonderful than the way the sun every evening, relaxed and easy, floats towards the horizon and into the clouds or the hills or the rumpled sea and is gone? And how it slides again out of the blackness every morning on the other side of the world, like a red flower streaming upward on its heavenly oils, say, on a morning in early summer at its perfect imperial distance. And have you ever felt for anything such wild love? Do you think there is anywhere in any language a word billowing enough for the pleasure that fills you as the sun reaches out, as it warms you, as you stand there empty-handed? God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up, renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing material away. No earthly glory accompanies us, but mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. God, you redeem the souls of your servants, and none shall be forever desolate." Death has taken our beloved Joan. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Joan's love that united us in life, in which death cannot sever. For her companionship shared upon life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought joy and happiness, and are now a precious remembrance. For all these and more we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the old and yet new message of God's nearness, telling of our kinship with the Creator, in darkness as in light, in sorrow even as in joy, in death even as in life. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. I lift up my eyes unto the hills. From whence will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and of earth. Kohelet wrote in Ecclesiastes, "For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak." It's become a bit of a cliche to read from Proverbs 31, Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, and yet there were some parts of it that so spoke to our experience of Joan that I thought it was worth reading today. A woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her and so lacks nothing. She does good and never harm all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on in the night. She reaches out to those in need. She is clothed in strength and dignity and faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. In just a moment, we'll ask her children to come up and sing her praises. But first, a moment of silence that we share before we hear from family. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, be acceptable to you. Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. Adonai, my rock and redeemer. Amen. Nancy, why don't you go first?
To the living I am gone, to the sorrowful I will never return. To the angry I was cheated, but to the happy I am at peace, and to the faithful I have never left. I cannot speak, but I can listen. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful sea, as you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts and your memories of the times we've loved, I never do this. I never cry like this. Sorry. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts and your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. For if you always think of me, I will never have gone. Just thought we should get that over with. Like a good cry. Okay. As I reflect upon Mother's life, well, as you know, over the last year in particular, as her health has continued to decline, I've spent more and more time with her. And over these last few months, I've asked the question often as I looked at her, how shall I live? And I've thought, how shall we live collectively? And then I would think about it more. And I realized we can't do it alone. And yet we do it alone. Mother found joy in the simplest of pleasures. Her family and the nature that had surrounded her for a lifetime. And she and Dad both adored life. They never gave up on life, and they never took it for granted. There's a quote by an American writer whom I really love, and her name is Terry Tempest Williams. And she has a quote which I thought summed up Mother so well that I wanted to share it with you. Before I do, I'd like us all to close our eyes and imagine Mother sitting in her favorite chair in the sunroom. Maybe she's got the newspaper on her lap, and it's a summer's day, and all the windows of that sunroom are open, and she can hear the sound of nature coming through it. And she listens to the bird song. The quote goes like this: "Once upon a time, when women were birds, there was the simple understanding that to sing at dawn and to sing at dusk was to heal the world through joy. The birds still remember what we so often forget, that the world is meant to be celebrated." And I know for all of us, that is what Mother would want. That's what we should take forward from her. Mother and Dad always took the opportunity to celebrate and to celebrate life. And so thank you all.
So, I'm a fairly private person, and so folks know usually I keep my emotions and things inside. And so, this coat I'm wearing is only the second time I've worn it in 24 years. It was my father's. And although today was a good day, it's a lot colder than I thought it was going to be. I was going to joke that it was going to be hot, but I want to wear it because of this. It'll probably go in the closet for another 24 years. But what I want to do is just thank folks that the things that were important to my mother, I think, besides family number one and animals number two, was her home. And it was so important for her to be there. And when she had her car accident a few years ago, and I had concerns about could she stay there, and we took her to sort of a, not assisted living, but sort of a independent living place to try to see what she looked like just for a period of time. I thought it was fine. She hated it because she did not want to leave her home. And I said, there's only one way she's going to leave her home, which is what she did, feet first rather than head first. And what I wanted to do was to thank the various people over the years. Between my sister Nancy, who, before my father, and when I was in the Carolinas and in Virginia and I couldn't come up, she would drop things and come up without hesitation when she was needed. And my sister Lori provided emotional support that I could not do. And she'd be here for weeks and months at a time. And that gave so much support to my mother. And to the Gretchen and to Dina and the aides who over the past year, before that when their accident, who were able to keep my mother in her home that she never could have done, because the option was that or a nursing home. And she could not have done that without all those folks. And to the Kalishmans, who never could have stayed in her home if not for them. And it's go unsaid, but they know what it meant to all of us for them to do that. For the last 15 years or so, I kind of coordinated her medical care. And especially since the pandemic, I basically took over her medical care. And again, she used to joke, and sometimes she'd say things and she'd sort of grab onto a phrase and the things she wished, she never let go of that phrase. And so I one time mentioned her a couple years ago, how she said, "How are you doing?" "Oh, but nothing hurts." I was afraid, nothing hurts. So you're trying to get something, nothing hurts. I'm okay enough, but nothing hurts. I joked one time a couple years ago, say, "Mother, on your tombstone, we're going to put nothing hurts." Here lies Joan Newman, nothing hurts. So, I don't know, we still have to make decisions about the tombstone, but if she were here now, she'd say nothing hurts. I'm okay, nothing hurts. So, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for everybody that everybody did in their own parts. It kept her in her home, which was so important. We were convinced if it wasn't for Gail, she would have moved back to St. Louis years ago. And she could have picked up her home. She would have done that and done it. So, that's it. It's okay.
Yeah. Let Andrew go.
Hello. So this was a poem written actually by my father for the occasion of Grandma's 90th birthday. So it does feel appropriate for this, I think. And it's called Nature's Child. I was told to make sure I mentioned the name. It's called Nature's Child. There is no passing tide of age here, no weight of fully lived life, no weary dusk or broken sleep to torment and deepen. There is only bright step and strong heart, a playing of puppies yet signals a spark, still lit with joy by the strain of a leash, a bark of welcome, a canine eye a glint with fulsome response to a loved face. In nature's ways there are set simple transactions of the soul, tending its celebrants gently, saving our dull, unwitting species from itself, a daily benediction given by our animals, our unbidden guardians, asking us sweetly for what we would but foolishly deny them. Be nature's child is their call. Love me, love us all, and through restoration of your faith we will save you the withering of time. They might add, just look at Joan.
See how I do with the tears. It's my specialty. So glad to have you all here. It is a beautiful day. Ooh. To celebrate a beautiful life. And so this is a poem that I hope I can get through, that all of you probably know well. But here's a little part that I had never heard before. I decided to look up the author of the poem. The poem is called "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep." Of course, I'll do the weeping, but... So this was written by Mary Elizabeth Fry, and there are some interesting intersections, coincidences, perhaps with Mother, with Joan. This woman was a Midwesterner. She was born in Ohio in 1905. She wrote this poem in 1932. And it's interesting. Here's an interesting intersection of how she came to write this poem. Staying with her was a young Jewish girl from Germany. And at that time, she learned that her mother back in Germany had fallen ill, but she did not go back to be with her because of the anti-Semitic waves arising in 1932 in Germany. And then her mother died, and she said, I was not able to stand at her grave and shed a tear. And this inspired Mary Elizabeth Fry to write this poem. A couple other things. The Jewish girl's name was Margaret Schwarzkopf. And Mary Elizabeth Fry also wrote poems about animal welfare. She was very devoted to the care of animals, so we have a very strong connection there. And she lived to age 98, a couple more years. Mother almost made it there. And she died in 2003, and she's buried in Baltimore City Cemetery, for those of you who have a Baltimore connection, including Grandpa Jack's family from Baltimore. Okay, so, do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
And is there anyone else who wants to speak? As I was listening to the words of Nancy, Chip, and Lori, as I read through various tributes to Joan, it became abundantly clear not only that Joan was tirelessly and lovingly devoted to family, but also that she had a much broader definition of family than most. Of course, it started with her family growing up in St. Louis and the continued close bond she had with her sister Nancy, her frequent traveling companion. Despite being in this area for over 70 years, living in that beloved house for 63, she still proudly identified as a Midwestern girl, and she picked up my Midwestern accent the first time we met. Her family grew when she married Jack, and with each child that followed, Nancy, Gail, Lori, and Chip, and sons and daughters-in-law, and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But for Joan, family ties weren't just about shared DNA. Her dear friends, Jane and Esther and so many more, were also family. All of Allied, from the volunteers at Vista, which she founded, to Marianne at Woodlawn and Jim Brogna, became family. And in some ways, closest of all the animals in her life were dear family members as well. Indeed, most of the time when I came over, I would hear first about the dogs. As Nancy said, what a shame we weren't born with 4 legs. She and Jack were devoted to each other for nearly 50 years, and their lives together were active, social, and filled with laughter. Kathy, Esther's daughter, wrote, "I remember the parties that your parents would throw at their house, the laughter of all their friends around the dining room table. That crew of friends was something very memorable." She was immensely proud of Nancy, Lori, and Chip, and of course would always share stories about their lives and about her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. That was all to be expected. But what was much rarer, especially for someone of her generation, was her deep pride in and immense love for Gail. Joan's face would always light up as she shared some anecdote about Gail. She and Jack were way ahead of their time in terms of their decisions about Gail. Gail was a full member of the family, included in everything. We never complained about having to get her a babysitter when Gail was in her 40s. Marianne described the day that Joan signed the papers for Gail to move into Woodlawn. Joan said, "My loss is your gain." Marianne said, "No, Gail is a gift that you are sharing." Joan generally had a stiff upper lip, but that day when she walked out, Marianne saw her lean over, put her face in her hands, and sob. Then she collected herself and went on her way. Though she had been entirely dependent on Jack, with him paying the bills and taking care of everything, in many ways typical of that time, when he took ill, she took charge and made sure he received the care he needed. And when he died 24 years ago, she picked herself up, took everything on, and was fiercely independent from that point on, balancing her checkbook herself just 3 weeks ago. She showed that strength, commitment, and passion in a variety of ways. She was calm in crises, through Jack's illness or if Gail had a seizure. When Laurie's boys were young, the two of them went sledding in the backyard, and Andrew came in to say, "Jamie, I think, needs your help," because he had hit a wall. Joan remained collected and took him straight down to Wilkes-Barre to get checked out. She wasn't at all hesitant to speak her mind as well, and she was proud to say, "I cannot tell a lie." And that strength came through her volunteer work as well. When Nancy was 12 or 13, she saw her mom speaking about Allied at a statewide event. She was just blown away by Joan as a public speaker. And that talent for public speaking continued throughout her life, including her 90th birthday and the pet therapy parade, and when at 91 she spoke at an Allied luncheon. Her love of animals started way back when she was a child in St. Louis. She had Chinese silkies that she would walk with down the street. Appropriately enough, I found out, silkies are known not only for their furry appearance, but for being the chicken breed that is happiest brooding and raising chicks that are not their own. That certainly describes Joan's ongoing devotion not only to her own dogs and the rest of the menagerie, but to countless animal rescue groups. One year there was a terrible winter storm here and the electricity went out. So she went to her aquarium and put the fish in a lovely soup tureen, took her dog Trooper, went to the hotel and announced, "I am here with my dog and fish." And she stayed there for a week. Trooper kept going back and forth through the lobby, and the pianist there even composed a song for him. The last time that I saw her out and about was late August at Indraloka, a local animal rescue farm, and Joan was so clearly thrilled to be there. The day before she died, she was watching Animal Planet with Laurie and commented on how beautiful she thought the anteaters were. That reminded me of another Mary Oliver poem. Some questions you might ask. Is the soul solid, like iron? Or is it tender and breakable, like the wings of a moth and the beak of an owl? Who has it and who doesn't? I keep looking around me. The face of the moose is as sad as the face of Jesus. The swan opens her white wings slowly. In the fall, the black bear carries leaves into the darkness. One question leads to another. Does it have a shape, like an iceberg, like the eye of a hummingbird? Does it have one lung, like the snake and the scallop? Why should I have it, and not the anteater who loves her children? Why should I have it and not the camel? Come to think of it, what about the maple trees? What about the blue iris? What about all the little stones sitting alone in the moonlight? What about roses and lemons and their shining leaves? What about the grass? I would tend to side with Mary Oliver in terms of the souls of the anteaters, but this I know for certain. Joan's soul was expansive and loving. May the lessons of her life and her broad definition of family continue to inspire. Zichrona Livracha, her memory and in her soul are blessings to us all. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the warmth of summer and the blueness of sky, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart, whenever it is, too soon, and leave us bereft on a lonely way. But you are the living fountain from which our healing comes. To you the stricken look for comfort, and the sour-laden for consolation. God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures, and the soul endures, as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. Our service will conclude with two prayers. First, El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer of God full of compassion, and then the Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. The mourner's Kaddish was written not in the elegant Hebrew of the scriptures, but in the people's Aramaic. It was a prayer that the rabbis first told whenever they would finish a chapter of study, hoping that that added bit of wisdom would bring God's dominion on earth a little quicker. At some point, one of our ancestors made the metaphorical leap to recognize that there is no better textbook than a life well lived. For those lessons, we recite these prayers. Please rise. El Malei Rachamim, compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Joan Newman, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say together, Amen. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'gala v'zman kari v'imru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitvomam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shemei d'kudesha brichu, Le'elan min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, Amen. May God grant peace to those who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. And now if we would gather as close together as we can, and if you'll repeat these words after me, speaking them to Joan's children and to all of us here in mourning. Repeat after me. May God console you
May God console you
with all who mourn
with all who mourn
in Zion and Jerusalem.
in Zion and Jerusalem.
Hamakom yenechem etchem b'toch sha'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. God will comfort you amidst all who mourn. Now go forth in peace to life. This concludes our service.